So, you might remember that in both of my original and remade bottom 10 He-Man episodes list, I named The Royal Cousin as the worst episode on He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. On the revised bottom 10, I also placed the Season 2 episode The Good Shall Survive as the second worst episode. Now, me always putting The Royal Cousin out there as the worst He-Man episode is honestly a bit of a gut reaction. I hated this episode the first time I ever saw it, and no matter how many times I come back to it, I'm always equally unimpressed by it. It really took me to re-watching The Good Shall Survive for the second time before I truly understood how gut-wrenchingly awful it was, and I even dedicated a full video to it. But here's the thing. I've mentioned that The Royal Cousin was written by Robbie London, one of the best scriptwriters on He-Man, while The Good Shall Survive was written by Richard Pardee, or Pardee, I'm still not sure, one of the worst writers on the show. And I've often wondered, is The Royal Cousin really that bad? Is The Good Shall Survive actually worse? Now, I kinda originally planned to make a point-for-point comparison, but as I'm looking at those comparisons, it starts to get painfully evident over and over again that The Royal Cousin, despite being an awful episode, has more than a few redeeming qualities, while The Good Shall Survive really has none. So, what is it individually that makes both of these episodes so bad? The Royal Cousin is, of course, about Adam's annoying cousin Jeremy coming to visit and causing headaches for everybody. However, it's also about Duncan building a rock softener for soil development, with Evil Lyn and Triclops using Jeremy to steal it in order to use it to take over Castle Grayskull. And apparently they had some other plot that they tried to make work involving the stock yellow ball, which also starts breaking the castle from the inside, and which He-Man fights, resulting in this awful mess of animation. The Good Shall Survive is about an ancient race of insect people, the Tycons, waking up to eat the honey supplies of the bee people, and after He-Man fails to stop them, they literally eat the entire kingdom's food supplies. However, they're misled in this by Skeletor, and once He-Man confronts the Tycons, who are suffering from stomach aches from having eaten Orko's terrible cooking, he's able to talk sense into them, and turn them on Skeletor to reclaim his food supplies to replace the ones the Tycons ate. So yes, you can already see the problem. I've mentioned many times how Jeremy is the worst child character on He-Man, debatably the worst child character from any cartoon. He's at least somewhat realistic in being bratty and irresponsible, but it makes his turn towards the episode's end way less believable when he realizes he's actually done something pretty awful. I've always said before that if there was at least one scene of Jeremy acting like a normal person, no shaking hands with Orko doesn't count, instead of being just an insufferable butt munch through the first 2/3 of the episode, his bratty behavior could at least be put in some context. The Good Shall Survive's problem is multifold. There's the Tycons, who are kind of a bizarre threat, that an all-devouring race of insect people could potentially be very scary, but they never really come off that threatening. Just kinda goofy looking, honestly. And of course, I hate that the bee people are at the forefront of the story, because I really hated what they did with the voice performances. Seriously, it's like having a whole bunch of buzz-offs. One thing both episodes have in common is also really poor animation direction. The Royal Cousins feels very half-assed, even by Season 1 standards. And The Good Shall Survive's direction is admittedly even worse, considering it's Season 2. And by this point, He-Man tended to have a lot of new and fairly high-quality animation in each episode. Here we come to the point where I have to say The Royal Cousin actually has some redeeming qualities. For one, somewhat unintentionally, I think Jeremy is kind of a funny character. He's so unrelentlessly shitty to everyone, and such a huge baby that he almost flips into caricature. Now yes, he's still very grating, especially at the start of the episode, and really the fact of how he shows no remorse for anything is what makes him so frustrating. But again, this episode focuses on Evil Lyn and Triclops and has them going on a solo mission to take over Grayskull. Granted, their plot is a little paper thin, but actually feels like it's part of the series' lore. It checks a lot of boxes for a good solid He-Man plot, even if the execution is a little shitty. The same really can't be said about The Good Shall Survive. The stakes are pretty high, literally Skeletor plans to starve Eternia, but it feels a little, unbelievable, or not credible. Like, are we seriously expected to believe the Tycons can eat the whole food storage for the entire kingdom, but also believe that some of Orko's cooking could suddenly just give them all stomach aches? You see where I have a hard time swallowing that one. And also in the episode, we're never actually shown them eating all the food. We're just shown some storeroom with some broken boxes and stuff. Does it look like enough food to feed a whole kingdom could fit in there? Never mind all the incongruities resulting from the dialogue and such. Once you take all of that into account, the plot of the episode begins to feel rather hollow. Yes, Skeletor's there, and I guess I sort of like that He-Man shows his better nature, using that to turn the Tycons against Skeletor rather than using violence, but it doesn't really click for me, on a logical level at least. So yes, on a purely objective level, The Good Shall Survive is the worst episode. It's just so utterly nonsensical. I find the Bee People so grating that I can't really even enjoy it ironically. Does that excuse the utter half-assedness of Robbie London's writing in The Royal Cousin? Not really. So maybe if sometime in the future I ever redo my bottom 10, their positions might shift, but I doubt I really have any reason to redo the list, so I'll just post these musings here just for posterity. At least now I've talked about Jeremy in something other than a bottom 5 or a bottom 10 video. Until next time, I have the power, so can you.